Okay. Now, what is a character dominating set? Now, character dominating set we refer to as CDS is a set of vertices such that any vertex in the graph is either in the CDS or is a neighbor of a vertex in the CDS. Like for this graph, I can say 3, 4 is will form a CDS because you can check for any vertex in the graph, it is either in the CDS or is a neighbor of a vertex in the CDS. So 3, 4 are already in the CDS. Now 1 has 3 as well as 4. So at least one of the neighbors of a vertex should be in the CDS if it is not in the CDS. So in the case of 1, both its neighbors are in the CDS. In the case of 2, at least one of its neighbors, so 4 is in the CDS. In the case of 5, 3 is in the CDS. In the case of 6, 4 is in the CDS. So at least so if a vertex is not in the CDS, at least one of its neighbors should be in the CDS. So that's how we look at a CDS. So again, the entire set of vertices could be considered as a character dominating set because it still satisfies the definition. A vertex is either in the set or at least one of its neighbors is in the set. So the entire set of vertices could be considered as a CDS. So what we want is a minimum size character dominating set. What is the smallest set of vertices such that for any vertex in the graph it is either in the CDS or has at least one neighbor in the CDS. So if you look at it, the CDS is kind of like a backbone for a network. So if you think, if you model a network as a graph, the CDS is like more like a backbone of the network, in the sense that if you know what is broadcasting, means if say any node wants to broadcast a message to every other node in this graph, which is a network now, then to whom it has to forward the message or to which nodes the message has to be forwarded so that they will take care of spreading it out to every other node in the graph. So if say node 1 has a message to broadcast, to whom it should send that message, it will send that message to its neighbors that are in the CDS. So that in this case 1 will send to both 3 and 4. Then 3 will take care of sending it to 5, 4 will take care of sending it to 2 and 6. Now think about node 2. If it has a message to broadcast, again it will send to its neighbors that are in the CDS. So in the case of 2, only 4 is in the CDS. Then 4 will have to send the message to 3 as well as to 6, which is a neighbor. So the nodes that are in the CDS will kind of share the message to all their neighbors, which could include the other nodes in the CDS. So in this case, 4 will send the message to 3 and 6, so that way the message now reaches 3. So now 3 will send the message to its neighbors 1 and 5. So in the sense, we are not letting every node to broadcast a message. It becomes what is called then flooding of the network. So if every node broadcasts that particular message to its neighbors, that process is called flooding, which is not a good process because then you're just using the network bandwidth by letting every node to broadcast to its neighbors. But by letting only the nodes that are part of the minimum character dominating set to broadcast a message, you are optimizing the bandwidth because the sender of the broadcast will just share it to all its neighbors that are part of the current MCDS, the minimum character dominating set. So once the message reaches those nodes that are part of the character dominating set, they just broadcast to all the neighbors, and that is guaranteed to reach every node in the graph. So that's why we say for every vertex, either it should be in the CDS or one of its neighbors should be in the CDS. And that guarantees that the broadcast message reaches every node in the network. Okay, so this is a application of this minimum character dominating set in a real world network. Okay, so now what we are going to see is heuristic. Again, this is an NP complete problem to determine a minimum character dominating set in a given graph. Now you should see the word connected in this minimum connected dominating set. So now why this has to be connected? So because there is something simply called a dominating set. Okay, so just listen this carefully. Don't confuse when you listen this. So a dominating set is itself a set of vertices such that for any vertex in the graph, either that vertex is in the dominating set or one of its neighbors is in the dominating set. So that's what a dominating set means. Now here we deal with a connected dominating set. That means if I say 3, 4 form a dominating set, the 3, 4 should be reachable to each other. Means there should be at least a path, there should be a path between them. In this case we have an edge between them, 3, 4. Now we are going to look at another example, say this example, and you're going to find a connected dominating set of this 5 vertices B, C, G, J, L. Now again it satisfies the definition of dominating set because for any vertex in the graph it is either in the in the dominating set or one of its neighbors is in the dominating set. But we call this dominating set as a connected dominating set because among these 5 vertices B, C, G, L, G, J, L, they are kind of reachable to each other through the edges. Either they are directly connected to each other. If they are directly not connected, they have at least a path between them. So B and J are not directly connected, but there's a path between B and J using the other vertices that are part of this connected dominating set. Okay, so if they are either directly connected or not, they should be connected, reachable to each other. So that's why it's called a connected dominating set. So why we need that? Because in order to broadcast a message to all the nodes, we want connectedness among the vertices that are part of the dominating set. So that's why it's called a connected dominating set rather than just a dominating set. So within that CDS, we want now is a minimum size CDS. Okay, because the whole graph, if it's connected, that can also form a connected dominating set. So what we want is a minimum size set to form a connected dominating set. Okay, so that's the idea behind this MCDS. So now we are going to look at a heuristic to determine an MCDS, and we'll use an example to understand this heuristic. Now, in the case of the independent set, okay, now again, if you look at the definition, they are different, right? So in the case of independent set, the definition is a set of vertices such that there is no edge between any two vertices in that set. That's what is the definition of independent set. And the idea behind the minimum neighbors heuristic to determine maximum independent set is if you include a vertex in the independent set, it will exclude only few other nodes to be part of the independent set. So that means we prefer to include nodes with fewer number of uncovered neighbors to be part of an independent set. So in order to what? In order to maximize the size of the independent set. Now think about it. What we want to do here is, in the case of connected dominating set, we want to minimize the size of a CDS. So that means we go through the iterations. In each iteration, we will prefer to include a node that will cover more neighbors. Okay, so that the total number of nodes that we eventually want to include in the connected dominating set is as few as possible. So with fewer nodes in the connected dominating set, we want to cover as many nodes as possible. Okay, so that's why this heuristic is kind of like a maximum neighbor based. So that's why it's called the degree based heuristic. So we prefer to include nodes with a larger degree. Especially when I mean larger degree, we have to look at in terms of the number of uncovered neighbors. So to begin with, yes, you can just prefer to include that node with the largest degree because like the other heuristic, to begin with, no vertex is covered. So the degree of a vertex is simply the number of uncovered neighbors. But as we go through the iterations, we have to really consider the number of uncovered neighbors as the basis. Okay, all right. So this is a given graph. Go ahead and find the degree, which is the number of uncovered neighbors in this case for every vertex. Now, among these vertices, we find the vertex with the largest number of uncovered neighbors. So that's going to be G or J. So we break the tie in favor of the lower alphabet. So in terms of that, we'll pick 6 G as the vertex to be included in the minimum character dominating set. So G now covers its 6 neighbors. So I color G in orange and color its 6 neighbors in yellow. So now those 6 neighbors are covered. So G has no more uncovered neighbors, that's why I indicate as 0. So we have to now recompute the number of uncovered neighbors for every vertex, which could change. So like for example, A had 2 uncovered neighbors before, now A has only 1 uncovered neighbor, which is E. B had 5 uncovered neighbors before, but now B has only 3 uncovered neighbors, and so on. So you have to go ahead and determine the number of uncovered neighbors for every vertex. So after you do that, now among the covered vertices, so the yellow colored vertices are the ones that are the covered vertices. Covered vertices means at least one of their neighbors is part of the counter dominating set. So that's what we mean by covered vertex. So among the vertices that are covered, we should pick the one that has the maximum number of uncovered neighbors. Okay. So in this case, among these 6 vertices that are covered, the one that has a maximum number of uncovered neighbors is J, which has 5 uncovered neighbors. So we include J now to be part of this minimum character dominating set. So why I pick the vertex that among the covered neighbors? Because again we want connectedness among the vertices in the dominating set. So that's why when I pick a vertex that is covered, that means it is a neighbor of at least one vertex that is already in the dominating set, which is G. So when I pick J, it has an H to G. So we try to maintain the connectedness among the vertices in the dominating set. Okay, so J covers its 5 uncovered neighbors, which are like F, I, M, N, and O. So those 5 nodes are now covered. So we have to now redetermine again for all the vertices in the graph the number of uncovered neighbors. So for example, the case of I, which previously had 2 uncovered neighbors, which are E and M, has now only 1 uncovered neighbor, which is E, because M is kind of covered now. So now again, you color the covered nodes because you want to distinguish them from the uncovered nodes as you go through the calculations. So now for the next iteration, we again pick among the covered vertices, which are the yellow colored vertices, the one with the largest number of uncovered neighbors, which is in this case B. It has 2 uncovered neighbors. Now again, when I pick a covered vertex B, it has at least one neighbor that is already part of the CDS, which is in this case G. So we maintain the connectedness of the dominating set. So B will cover its 2 uncovered neighbors A and E. As a result of that, A no longer has any uncovered neighbor, E also doesn't have any uncovered neighbor. So among the remaining uncovered vertices, which are D and P, we have to, of course, those are not covered, so you have to find, as long as there's at least one uncovered neighbor, we have to keep going. Okay. So now again redetermine the numbers. So just to make sure you're not making any mistake, just go and check what is the number of uncovered neighbors for every vertex. So C has 1 uncovered neighbor, similarly H has 1 uncovered neighbor, L and O have 1 uncovered neighbor, which is P. So that means no other covered vertex has any uncovered neighbor. So it means we have to either pick C, H, L or O. All the 4 have 1 uncovered neighbor. So we again break the tie in favor of the lower ID or lower label vertex, which is C. So we pick C to be part of the connected dominating set, and that will cover D. So now we have L and O to be considered because they have 1 uncovered neighbor. So again, by picking C, it's only covering D. So the numbers will have not changed for the other vertices because they are not having any edge to C or D. Alright, so now we again break the tie in favor of the lower label, which is L. So when we pick L, it covers P. Okay, so L is again already covered, so it means it has an edge to at least one node that is part of the dominating set, in this case G. So now we do not have any uncovered vertex, that means we are done. So the vertices now that are part of the connected dominating set will also now can also be now considered to be part of the minimum connected dominating set. That's the MCDS. Right, so again you can cross check for every vertex in the graph, either the vertex is in the MCDS or has at least one neighbor node that is in this MCDS. Okay, so how we determine this? Again, given a graph, go ahead and find the number of neighbors for every vertex, which is actually the number of uncovered neighbors for every vertex. So we prefer to include the vertex with the maximum number of uncovered neighbors. So to begin with, you find the vertex that has the largest degree, which is the maximum number of neighbors, which means also the maximum number of uncovered neighbors. So we pick G, it covers 6 neighbors, all its 6 neighbors. So we color those neighbors in yellow color to indicate they are covered, and the other vertices, say in this blue color, or just don't color them, they are now yet to be covered. So for every vertex, go ahead and find the number of uncovered neighbors based on this coloring. So now we are going to again look at only the covered vertices and see which one has the maximum number of uncovered neighbors. So in this case, J is the covered vertex that has the largest number of uncovered neighbors. So that's what we target each iteration, the covered vertex with the largest number of uncovered neighbors. So in this case, that's J. There's 5 uncovered neighbors. So now picking J to be part of the MCDS will cover all its 5 neighbors. So we have to redo the numbers for the number of uncovered neighbors, and again we find B to be the next vertex and so on. Okay, so every time you include a vertex to the MCDS, go ahead and update the number of uncovered neighbors for every vertex in the graph, and among the covered vertices, then pick the next vertex with the largest number of uncovered neighbors for the next iteration. Okay, so with that we kind of finish this syllabus. Okay, if you have any questions on this, we can